Welcome to a Season of Caring podcast where there's hope for living, loving, and caring with no regrets. This is Rayna Neises, your host, and today we're missing Karen. Karen, who is a hands-on caregiver, has found herself in a place in her season where she needed to take something off of her plate. And we talk about that often here on Season of Caring podcast, and I think there is nothing more important than really knowing what you can handle. And when you're at a point where you need to make changes, you need to just do it. So I want to applaud Karen for taking the step to say, it's just too much right now. Karen's a caregiver for both her husband and her father. There's just things happening right now that have changed and are needing more of her and more of her attention. So she stepped aside as our co-host, and we just thank her for her service, for willingness to allow us into her heart and her life. And we just bless her as she continues her caregiving journey. So today we're going to talk more about what happens when we find ourselves in a place where we're trying to decide, is it time to have our parents move out of their current home, or is it time to just make some changes to that home? As my guest, Marty Stevens-Heebner, mentioned last podcast, there are definitely things that professionals can help us with coming alongside, whether it be preparing the home for them to be safe at home, or helping them to pack up and get ready to move to an assisted living or a smaller location. I love the service that she provides. I think it is amazing to have that support. I really encourage you to get support if you can. But I thought today we'd just talk a little bit more about how do you know, and what are some things to keep in mind whenever you find yourself at a place where you're just concerned. Is my parent safe at home? So as we ask ourselves that question, I think safety becomes one of the most important things that we consider. Are they safe at home? There can be a lot of answers to that question. And one of the things that I read at seniorsafetyadvice.com was kind of giving us maybe some red flags to consider that it might be time to do something different. They mentioned frequent falls. We know falls can greatly impact the overall health of our parents, so it's definitely important to keep that in mind. If they're leaving a stove or an oven unsupervised, obviously a big concern. They also mentioned things like neglect of their hygiene or difficulty with their daily tasks like processing their mail or paying bills. Even having missing or incorrectly taking their medications. These were some major warning signs that they mentioned to keep in mind. Might mean that some things need to change. Now, one of the things that I think is most important as we are considering this is, what is that change? I think sometimes we just assume the change is, okay, it's time to scoop them up, remove them from their home, and put them into assisted living or even independent living. Sometimes that is jumping all the way to the end with missing a few steps in between. I've shared before how we found ourselves in a place where my dad needed more help and my aunt was needing to leave the home, and so he couldn't be at home alone. We all knew that. So we immediately looked at a placement. And again, there's some amazing places with some great resources, but sometimes that's just not the best step, or sometimes that's not the next step. I want to encourage you to really consider what is the best next step. I hear of people who have a loved one with Alzheimer's who starts to wander, and they immediately put them in a lockdown facility. It is very important to keep them safe, but I do want you to stop and think, what other options are there? There are special locks you can put on the door that can really change their ability to come and go as they want. There's the Ring doorbell that would allow you to see movement and be notified if they were to leave the front door or the back door. In our home with my dad, we had some motion detector alarms that when he went downstairs, we were notified that he did that so that we could make sure that we knew where he was going and talk to him about what he was trying to accomplish. We put locks on the gate in the backyard so that he wouldn't be able to leave the backyard when he was out raking leaves or working in the yard and enjoying that, and we might have stepped away for a few moments to use the restroom or get a drink. So I think there's some things that we can do to help assist. And that's one of the things I wanted us to think about today. What are some things that you can do to really help them if they aren't ready to leave their home yet? And definitely decluttering is a really important piece. You can even have people like Marty come in and do an evaluation of the home. Do we need grab bars? Are we needing to look at the flooring, possibly remove some area rugs to eliminate that fall risk? Really just taking a look at some of those challenges that they're having and how can we solve them. Maybe somebody needs to check in on medication management. Maybe we need to change our prescriptions and get the little pill packs. Did you know now that supposed to be no additional cost pill packs that are available with the parent's prescription that are labeled AM, noon, PM. So that it's really easy to have those set out and to see if they were taken, number one, when they should have been, or to just make sure that the pills don't get mixed up and the dosage isn't wrong. There's also some great technology today that have medication dispensers available that have a little alarm on them to remind our loved one it's time to take the medication, and actually dispenses it into a little cup so that they can take those pills and make sure they don't miss any. Those also will send a reminder to someone else's phone if the medication was not taken on time. So there's lots of different things we can do to offer assistance between seeing some concerns and moving them out of the home. But one of the things I do think we need to consider is, even if we're not deciding to move them today, how can we help step them in that direction? Because everybody knows when you have a move that comes on suddenly, maybe even just 30-day notice to get out of a rental, it is just overwhelming to have to think about packing up your whole home in that short period of time. So what if you were to help them start now? What if you were to offer to help them to declutter and get rid of some of those things which are going to be burdensome in the future? Maybe you have that conversation. They would like to look at assisted living, or down the line, they can see themselves living in a community like that. That's great. Why not start the process of helping to prepare them? I think one of the things, as I was doing some research, that I saw that I thought was so helpful was really just surveying the project. Being realistic, getting them on board to say, hey, let's just take a look at that extra room or the storage space, or my goodness, the garage. And let's see what kind of projects are in here that we can tackle now, so that when you are ready, it'll be a lot easier to make that transition. It's important to talk. Marty mentioned that. It's important for them to feel heard and to really understand what's realistic. Starting the conversation early, gosh, that seems to be a theme, doesn't it? Starting the conversation early, and also then taking the next step to show that it's important to you by scheduling time. Look at it as an opportunity of setting aside time to spend with your loved one, not just trying to rush them through the process, but really sit and reminisce. Have regular set time that you're going to commit to doing it. There are some people who love to organize, some people who love to throw things away. But if your parent is a person who has a lot of stuff, that probably isn't them. So understand that this is going to be a process, and it's going to take time. It's probably going to take more time than you imagine or that you really want to invest. That's where a professional can come in, I think, and help in that way. But if you're going to choose to spend this time with your loved one, helping them process through all of their stuff and really considering if it's something they need to save, donate, or throw away, I would really encourage you to stop and make sure that you have the right mindset going into this time. Realizing that this can be a time of fun, laughter, reminiscing memories. It can be a great blessing. If you go into this time as a to-do list with a timeline, there's probably going to be arguments. most likely there's going to be stress and frustration on both parts. So let's just start off by saying we need to check our attitude and make sure we're going into it with an attitude of support and comfort, and that will really make it go better. So once we have time set aside and we aren't in a hurry, then we need to consider what the items are being used for. It's always hard to let go of things that we haven't used in a while, especially for our older generation. Marty did such a good job of mentioning that generation doesn't throw anything away because they found a use for everything. And so that mentality is still in them. It is part of who they are. And it's not fair for us to pressure them or make them feel guilty or expect them to be anything different. So we really have to enter into where they are and consider, how can we navigate this with them? What if you were to have a conversation with mom about something you know she hasn't used in 15 years, and you were to say, hey, mom, I think of kitchen items for some reason, but hey, mom, what if we were to put the things you haven't used for a while on this shelf in the pantry? And when you need it, you'll be able to know where to go to grab it, right? But let's say 6 months from now, if it's still on the shelf and you haven't used it, wouldn't that mean that someone else could get better use out of it? I mean, it's great that you have it, but if you don't ever use it, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to give it to a grandchild or allow me to donate it somewhere that someone could get use out of it? Might be the toaster oven that she just hasn't touched in years. Could just be serving platters, beautiful heirlooms that you have in a family that because she's not the one entertaining anymore, maybe it's time to hand it down to that granddaughter who's just starting her own home or her own family, or the friend who loves to entertain and will use it. Just stop and think about ways that you can have conversations that would help them to consider how they might be able to let go of things that they really aren't using. Another suggestion that I read was to declutter by category. I first thought, oh, that might be a little overwhelming. But then I also thought, that could be helpful. If we go in each room and pick up all the things that are similar, let's say office supplies. I don't know. In my house, I just thought of the 3-hole punch. I think we have 4 of them. Only because I owned a business before and I brought them all home. But see, why do I need 4 hole punches? I should be willing to let 1, 2, at least 2 of them go, right? So realizing how many of something you have by bringing it all into one place might be really helpful. Also, I live in Kansas, so I have a winter wardrobe and a summer wardrobe. So really, when I bring it all together, gosh, I have so much better of a picture of how many clothes I have than I do when I'm dealing with them separately. So bringing things of like things together and really evaluating which one do I love, which one can I let go of, who can I give it to, all of those kinds of questions might be really helpful for your parent as well. Another suggestion is taking charge of your childhood items that are still in your parents' home. If you're like me and your parents lived in their home for over 40 years, then there are things that are yours that are still in the home. For some of us, there's a lot of stuff. My dad did a pretty good job of going through and giving them to me earlier on before his passing. But definitely even once he passed, we had an area of things that we had to decide, what do we want to do with? Really think about if there are any of your things cluttering your parents' space that you could take off their hands. Now, does that mean that you want all of them? Probably it doesn't. It might mean that you need to remove them from their sight and then let go of what you don't want and keep your own special memories for yourself. So there's oftentimes our clutter can really be causing our parents a stumbling block. So take some responsibility with that, ask for your stuff, and go ahead and take it home with you or do with it what you would like. And you might not share what you're going to do with it, just in case it breaks mom's heart that you throw away the painting from kindergarten. That brings us to the sentimental items. I thought Marty did such a great job talking about those sentimental items. I wish that I had spent more time listening to the stories behind some of the things. I do have some great stories, and I definitely have some items that I saved from my dad's home because of the stories. In fact, in our entryway, there was a little set, a picture of the French Quarter. It was purchased when our family lived in Louisiana back in 1976. And those pictures had always been a part of the family entryway into our home. So when we sold our family home, my sister and I were like, what are we going to do with these? And I was like, I don't know. You take one and I'll take one. And I have it hanging in a place that I don't see it very often. But every time I see it, I immediately go back to not only my family home, but living in Louisiana and what that was like for our family and the fun times that we had at that point. So the sentimental items, there are stories behind them. Spend time listening to the stories and then encourage your parent to see how could they put that out in a place that would remind them of it. Is there a place that you could hang that so it can be seen versus being in storage? When things are in storage, we don't see them. We don't think about them. They don't bring us joy, which is the whole point of keeping them. So is there a way to be able to bring those things out of storage, decide which ones are most important, and create an environment around your parent that reminds them of some of their favorite memories? The other idea I believe I heard from Kathy Lipp was, how would it feel to take a picture of the item and then release it? So understanding that the memory is what it triggers, and that's what brings the warm fuzzies inside of us, right? So taking the time to take a picture, maybe make some photo albums of eras and time periods or items that were really special to certain people, so that can be something you can actually type the story into. You could have a picture of the item, add the story below it, and that makes it a true keepsake that would bless all generations to see it and to be able to understand why it was so important. So is there some time you can invest in doing some of those things for mom or dad that would really bring them joy? Great thing to think about, and really stop to put yourself in their shoes and understand how hard it would be to let go of the stuff, especially because it really isn't about the stuff. It's about the memories that the stuff has attached to them. I hope that you found those tips helpful today, listener. And as you find yourself in a place where you're starting to get more and more concerned about your parents' safety in their living situation right now, the number one thing is to start talking about it. And that talking means listening and really understanding where your parent's coming from, and start to problem solve. What can you do to help them stay safe where they are? Or how can you start to make steps to allow them to find a new safe space? I loved what Marty said about creating a new space that's a reflection of their old space. So not jumping in and changing everything, but if they need to downsize, taking their favorite pieces and recreating that same feeling and experience of where they lived for so many years, that means so much to them. If we bring all new in, we're probably going to really throw them off and remove those things that bring great comfort. So keep in mind that safety is important, but it's not the only thing to be considered as you're thinking about where your parents live and the best place for them in this season right now. The other thing to remember is we can always revisit those decisions. We can always decide, this is working for a while, but when this happens, that means it's not working anymore. Or when this happens, we're going to look at something different. So stop and consider how you can support them in this season of their life by really considering their feelings and what's important to them. I found a few articles that I'm going to add to our show notes page that I thought were really helpful with content and could just give you a little bit more support around being able to make some decisions. And remember, just like everything else we say in this season of life, There are options. There are opportunities to get the support that you need. There are opportunities to hire help that specialize in this area. Certified senior move managers would be that resource. You don't have to be the only one who does this with your parents. You might find someone who loves to clean. I have a daughter-in-law who loves to clean. And so I have her help me go through things and get rid of things and move things to different places because she loves to do that. And I don't so much. So having that other person there can be really motivating. So find the family member who loves to clean, invite them to be a part and help you to start with the decluttering process with your parent today. The other person that you might need to add on your team is that certified senior move manager, just like Marty. So remember to look for those resources. You can hire a certified senior move manager to help you with the process, to think through the steps, to help you navigate the relationships and really make it a good situation for your parents. And you just have to ask for help to do that. So I want to challenge you to do that. If you find yourself being concerned about their safety, now's the time to start talking about it and building the team that will make all the difference. Thank you, listeners, for listening today. It's been my honor to talk to you more about how to support your aging parent as they get to a point where you're trying to decide where the best place is for them to live. Just a reminder, A Season of Caring podcast is created for the encouragement of family caregivers. If you have medical, financial, or legal questions, be sure to contact your local professionals and take heart in your season of caring.